So, beloveds, welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Tantra Talk with Live Tantra. I'm Shashi Solluna, and today our topic is such a big one. I think it's maybe a topic that brings many women and also men actually into the world of Tantra looking for answers. And the topic is about women and women's pleasure and intimacy. In fact, it's more about women's lack of pleasure and intimacy. So the question that we'll be asking today is really,
Mm,
why is it that so many women experience numbness, a lack of sensation, lack of pleasure, and even pain during intercourse, when we're all told by Hollywood and by media and by porn that it should be the most pleasurable, joyful thing in all of existence. And many women and couples suffer in silence, feeling there's something wrong with
mm,
them, they're broken, they're the only ones. Yet, actually, this is really a very big topic for many. So today, my
mm.
guest is Laura Walter from Universe Tantra, and she specializes in this topic. So we thought,
Yes.
okay, let's go into this. So welcome, Laura. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sashi. I'm so honored to be here. This is my favorite topic.
Yeah, it's such an important thing to talk about, right? Before we dive
Mm,
into the actual topic, I would love to hear a little bit about you and your own journey and how this ended up being your speciality. This is always a good question that
mm,
to begin with. So maybe you could share a little bit about your own journey
mm.
and your own exploration on this topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up with not so much personal boundaries allowed by, yeah, my caregivers. And that resulted from me as a young teenager to be so much in a pleaser role and not really able to speak up. And I was so needing love that I would be with my partners and I would just go along with whatever they desired. And just like my partners and everyone else I know, our education as teenagers was porn. And in porn, all the women are screaming at the top of their lungs the whole time. Everything's fabulous, especially the rough penetration. That would be really painful for me. And I just started imitating that to a degree,
Mhm.
even sometimes to get it over with. So I would imitate that. And many years later, realized that that was the start of my body shutting down because I wasn't authentic to what was actually my yes or no. I didn't even really was connected to my body because what is a very common trauma response is that our body wants to protect us from really uncomfortable and overwhelming situations. And so there is a numbness that comes in. And I could go along with pretend that I had a good time. And I would have a good time usually leading up to penetration. That was always
Mhm.
fabulous.
Right.
And then from the moment of actual penetration, it was almost like, okay, there was no pleasure anymore
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
my body wouldn't feel safe to feel because there were so many moments in the past where it was not good to feel. So
Mhm.
that's how pain gets covered up by numbness very quickly. And then dissociation comes in,
Mhm.
which is
So
usually like just thinking about other stuff, right?
yeah. So it's great that you share that you yourself have been through this, and so that because it's a very vulnerable topic and lots of people
Mm,
are tuning in here today, and I think it's really important to let people know. Sometimes we come across as experts, we're the expert on this and that, but often we have our own journey. I think always, actually, we have
mhm,
our own journey of struggles, and the reason we want to share the tools and the wisdom that we share is because it worked
mm,
for us, is because we found some
mm.
answers, and we want to share those answers with others and share what worked for us with others. As this
Yeah.
is an interactive conversation, and there are people joining all the time here. I'm also opening up the chat, and I'd like to invite this to be interactive. So for those who are listening in live, if you have any questions or comments that you wish to be included in the conversation, please feel free to put them in the chat. You can either put them publicly for everyone, or you can just find my name, which is down as Liv Tantra, and you can send me a private message if you want to remain um, confidential. That, or I will read out the question, but I won't say whose name it is. So you can share any questions that you have for Laura while we're talking in the chat, and I will do my best to weave all of those in. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. So let's talk a little bit about your journey then. So you were in a place where you just weren't enjoying penetration, and when you're saying not enjoying, is that just a lack of pleasure, or were you also
Yes.
experiencing pain?
Yes, sometimes pain, but I did not know in my beginning of my 20s that that was even like not normal,
Yeah.
because I had maybe friends who had more pleasure, and I thought, well, it must be about my body, maybe my, the way my vagina is, it just doesn't work. For her, it does. And it really took me a long time to uncover, yeah, what my body is holding and how to actually open up again. And I had kind of the peak of shame, frustration, and pain when I went online to search for healing. And I've already started my tantric journey, and there was very popular to have all these little glass dildo things. And they kind of, I don't know if anyone noticed, they look a bit like a crowbar also, they have a similar shape. And it's the advice is little written text maybe, or I had a video. Yeah, you just use this to make you, have the best orgasms of your life. Pop it in, find the pain, the armor, like go into the pain, and then your yoni is healed, right? So I was like, okay, good, go in the pain. And I went into the pain, but I wasn't as embodied. So I was actually not able to move the trauma and the pain that came up. So what was happening is I just
Mm,
froze again. So I was
mm,
in that moment for my body, it was like the same violation that has happened in the past, just repeated. There was no
right.
healing, there was just a re-traumatization.
Hmm.
And that's when I started really with somatic experiencing and really understanding what it means to use breath, movement, and sound to
Right.
move stuck energy and to heal trauma.
So could you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about the difference? Because I'm sure there are people here who've done the same thing. They've seen, like, these pleasure ones, and it's like that's the
Hmm.
solution. It's the
Yeah.
key to pleasure.
Yeah.
And then I know also as a teacher of Jade Egg that many women are like, oh, just buy a Jade Egg and put it in. And then they're like,
Yeah. Just pop
I
it
don't
in.
feel anything. And I have people writing to me like, so I'm all broken. I don't feel anything. And,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
wait. No, you're not meant to feel anything. It's like, it's like if you have a tampon inside, you don't feel it if it's just sitting there. You have to do the exercises. You have to move and
Yes.
breathe and sound. Like it's not the egg
Yeah.
that's going to save you. It's the practices, right?
Yes, for sure. It's the meditation as well, right? And the pain, yeah, and the breath and everything, yeah, that comes with it. Yeah, so basically what is with the wand, right? We're explaining a bit like how to not do what I did, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we've
So
got others here sharing. Yes, I've had that too.
and no one talks about it. I actually had two women calling me by randomly being like, you know what happened? And they were really ashamed, like just like I was, because I thought I did
Hmm.
it wrong, right? I'm already broken, and now I'm like too stupid to use this pleasure thing.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah, and all you can find online is that the one gives you pleasure, but actually your pelvic floor is so intricate with muscles and fascia and nerves and tissues, and you can, as I said, it's a crowbar. You can really put pressure because it's so, there's a leverage to this device. So it should really come with a little disclaimer
Yeah.
about how to go about. And what I always like, we can all do it together now. I always like to show in places that are already painful. So if you, for example, find this place where your jaw comes together, like the hinge, every human has some tension there. So you can find a place that's really quite painful. And you just breathe in and you press into the pain. And then you release the breath and the pressure. Ah.
Ah,
And that's it.
that's good. I
So
feel
you
it.
basically find the pain, and it's important to work with the relaxation of that muscle, because just as if you have a tough muscle here, of course, in the Swedish massage, we're like going in the pain, but the moment the body tenses against the pain, like that, we're not actually relaxing the muscle and getting rid of the tension. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what's happening in the yoni. If we're not able to relax around the pain, then we're creating more tension. And what
Yeah.
helps is to have this really slow exhale with the sound. Ah.
Hmm. So
And
right. So what you're pointing out is that many people will go in with a crowbar and press it against the pain, but then because they're not breathing and sounding, they're actually resisting the push
yeah,
and fighting more. So
and
it's
even
probably even
sometimes
make it
tensing
worse.
against it. Like if
Hmm.
there's fear coming up because we subconsciously we know that in this numbness and in this pain there are emotions attached to that. The body is holding anger, sadness, like a form of rage, disappointment, frustration,
Hmm.
all sorts of things are kind of locked into that tension from when it first got created. That's
Hmm.
how the body stores trauma, right? It's basically when we access the points that are numb or painful and we work with them, the body wants to release that energy from the past. The body doesn't want to hold on to it.
Hmm.
So the body tries to bring it up, like, here, look at this. Oof, can we get rid
Yeah.
of this, please? And then you need to be able to hold space for that. And when it comes up, like, wow, I'm making doing this pleasure practice, but suddenly I feel so small and hideous and angry. What am I doing in my bedroom with my crowbar, right? So
Mm.
that's when you really need the sound and the movement, because maybe in that moment, is to, what you really need is to punch your pillow, for example,
Mhm.
because this energy that is in your yoni that comes up, it needs to be moved. And that's where a lot of people don't have the skills or the education how to do the somatic release that you need for healing trauma from the yoni with your
Mhm.
glass wand or pleasure
So
wand.
basically, you're pointing out something really important that you think, oh, it's a pleasure practice, it's a pleasure wand, so I should just be feeling pleasure, and then either nothing happens because you're just kind of prodding it around, or you do start pressing into points where there's things locked away. But if you're not ready and prepared for letting emotions come out and willing to sound and express them and let them through,
Yeah.
then it's not going to be released.
And you can do that so beautifully. We're talking a lot about the pleasure one, but with your hands. I never tell my clients to start with a crowbar, right? I'm always like,
Yeah.
that's the last, because we actually want to start at the outside of the body. As I said here, if I'm not able to release the tension from my jaw gently, like not that it has to be gone, but like working with that, and I don't actually need to go to my yoni just now.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
can you talk a little
So,
bit about this tension in the yoni? Because we've also got
mm.
men joining here, which is great. Thank you guys for showing up
Hello,
to learn more
man.
about women's bodies. And I think we have a kind of concept that that's only people who've been through massive rape or abuse, and there's sort of like, well, why would someone be traumatized? She hasn't had a trauma.
Uh-huh.
So maybe you could speak a little bit about that, like how does
Yes.
that happen in the first place?
Yes. I think my story that's why I love to share my story, because I didn't experience rape, but my
Hmm.
body has noted some things in the past as a violation of a boundary. And my body has experienced a fear that my conscious mind in that moment didn't recognize, because I was like, oh, I love this man so much. I want him to, be with me. I want to have sex with him. But my body was like, actually, we're not ready. And this instills a fear because there is a distrust between, imagine the body is a person, right? And I'm the guard of this person. And I don't verbalize because the body can't speak, right? Like, it's a bit complex. Sorry. Hope you're coming with me in this metaphor. So, like, I'm having, like, me speaking up, expressing, this is the guardian for my body. And if my
Hmm.
body signals, oh, we're not ready, because my body, for example, goes a bit tense and I don't breathe deeply. And I might even start thinking about something else in that moment, like, oh, I should really paint this living room or whatever, where I'm about to have sex. So that's always of the body's language to you, saying like, hey, you're not in the moment and you're not in it for
Mhm.
penetration or whatever is about to happen.
Mhm.
So, or maybe you just tense your hands or your jaw, right? There's like subtle clues
Mhm.
that we need to learn about ourselves. It's like learning a new language, like
Mhm.
becoming really connected to how the body speaks. And if
Mhm.
we override that, the body closes down with tension, and that's kind of a fear response, right? So it's like we're saying, yes, come, but the body says no. And that no is literally your yoni closing a little, like the
Mhm.
muscles becoming tight.
Mhm.
And if we go in then with penetration, the yoni can't really welcome, feel, or enjoy anything that comes.
Mhm. Mhm.
And another thing I would like to add here is our anatomy of arousal, which I have never heard before I went on a 5-week training with Shashi Solluna.
It's my mission to
Hilarious.
share it.
Exactly. And I'm like spreading it like wildfire. So yeah, this is like a really important
Good.
piece that no one ever taught us. Like, why? So women actually have to be as erect as men to have sex. Just for
Yes.
us, it's harder to see whether we erect or not because it's all inside. And men don't often don't know how we look when we're fully aroused, and we don't know how it feels and how it looks. So there's just a piece of information missing, really, and
Mm.
how we do have to look, just to reveal it. So if you look at your own yoni with a mirror in a non-aroused state, and then you would play with yourself and look again, you could see that your lips and your clitoris and everything changes color because blood comes in, and also you're swelling up because you have so much erectile tissues, just as much as men. So the swelling up is like this beautiful cushion. And when all this blood is in your erectile tissue, then you can actually only feel the pleasure that this erectile tissue is made to feel. And the second advantage is it cushions you literally.
Mhm.
So if you're not that aroused, then you're so much more likely to experience pain from penetration
Mhm.
because there's no protective layer.
Mhm. Yeah, I think these two things are that you're highlighting are so important. Like one is knowing when our bodies are ready. And I love that you advise women to like listen to their bodies and take note what their messages are. But you mentioned some main ones of like contraction, when the body kind of braces itself. That's a no, ladies. That's a no. And men, that's a no. Like, if the
Yeah.
body braces itself and you can see that in your partner, you can feel it in yourself. It doesn't matter if your heart is like, yes, I love you and I want to have sex with
Yes.
you because I love you. It matters that the body is saying, no, 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 I'm not ready. And so I think this is super important for us to tune into and take it out of the head of like a discussion of will and put it into the
Yeah.
body of like a conversation around readiness. And the second thing you mentioned about all the tissues of arousal inside a woman's
Hmm.
body, that we can also be erect just like a man can,
Yeah.
because we have all of this erectile tissue. It's just spread around the yoni, all the way around it. And it is so important for us to look at that in a mirror, and also for men to look at that. I think it's good to kind of be
Yeah.
scientific rather than just like erotic with each other one time, and just kind of sit and look while a
Yeah.
woman's pleasuring herself
Yes.
and watch how the tissues swell up. So it's
Aha.
like, okay, now I know what she looks like when she's really swollen.
Yes.
And that prevents
Hmm.
so much pain in intercourse.
Yes. My partner and me, we joke a lot about the lost art of fingering. When did people stop fingering? Because you can actually, before penetration, right, your finger is so much smaller and has so much more intricacy in how to maneuver. And that's for your own finger, but also for your partner's finger.
Hmm.
A really great way to feel like how much pleasure is there if I move, and like how can I stroke on the outside of the labia and not even on the inside, right? But like how can I be really gentle with this whole, temple? And then if there is already a little bit like no opening for the finger, and you place it at the entry, you kind of want to be invited and
Hmm.
really slow down there. And there's so much exploration that can be done that really helps for the erectile tissue to become really puffy and engorged is the
Hmm.
term. Um, so yeah, that can all be done with your tongue, with your hands, in various ways before there's just like straight to penetration.
Hmm.
So yeah, especially when women already have a bit of a pain history. I think that's a really good addition.
So if a woman has never found this erectile tissue in her body before, what do you recommend for her?
Yes. Yes, I feel you, sister. I would have my finger inside. I'd be like, where is this G spot?
Yeah.
And so it's like also so
I don't
misleading
have
because it's
one.
not a
Everyone else
spot.
has
It's
one, but
like
I don't have
trying to
one.
find this button, like the clitoris that you just like touch and it's like amazing, right? Yeah, that makes it really hard to find it because yeah. Um, so basically if you want to explore your erectile tissue, as I said, you see the puffiness from the outside when you're seeing yourself in the mirror, and you can really see where it gets puffy from, right, where it changes in volume. There's your erectile tissue visible from the outside. And then when you go inside, you can feel right when you hook under, like where the G spot, I like to call it G area, is. It's a bit of this like, it's a bit of a different structure than the walls of your vagina. If you think of your vagina as a tube, right? There is the walls that are quite smooth. And then at the top, like hooking under, there's a different structure. And all of that is an erectile tissue that is protecting your urethra. And you can really feel it when you go in like this because there's little ridges on the sides that you can slip in. And that means it's like half the bottom of your urethra. So if you would pee from here and you put your finger in, right? Hope that doesn't get too complicated. You can feel all of this half circle of your urethra, which is like a round cylinder protecting this place. That's one
Hmm.
erectile tissue. And on the other side towards your anus, there is another little cushion. And that's really like a little cushion. It's really cute. And you can feel that when you push towards your anus. That's also your erectile tissue there.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
And we've got a question here. What if there's no pain, but just numbness?
Yeah. So pain and numbness are kind of like the same thing, different side.
Hmm.
Because yes. So what usually happens is when you have numbness, if you would stay there long enough and massage really gently, you would find pain, especially when you go in when you're not super aroused and you're just kind of finding the muscles around. So what I really like to tell the women who work with me is when they put when you put your finger inside like this and you squeeze, you feel a ring closing like a hair tie. That's your second ring of muscle. And a lot of women hold that tension that makes that, creates pain and numbness in there. And you can press into this hair tie, like it's really like a rubber band. And it, every woman that is numb that I've ever met has pain there.
Hmm.
Like also in other places, but for sure in this hair tie.
Hmm.
So that's where you can work. And then also when there is numbness, I still have some numbness and I had a lot of numbness. And what really helped me with numbness is to slow down like a proper Zen meditation. So
Hmm.
for example, if you place your finger on this G spot area and you press in and you hold for a while and you're just there, eventually, because you're pressing into this tissue, the blood flow wants to come in and you feel your own heartbeat in your G spot area. And you can just stay there for 5 minutes and meditate on this subtle pum, 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 on your heartbeat in your G area. And it's a really fine vibration because of the blood going. So that's something, for example, I really recommend for numbness is being so slow and waiting. Yeah.
Hmm. And so that's beautiful. The heartbeat of your yoni.
Yeah. It's really something to feel it for the first time. It's like, oh my God.
So clearly there's a lot of practices a woman needs to do on her own. So she's really in meditation
Mhm.
and feeling the
Mhm.
pain and work out and the numbness, and then behind it the pain, and then hopefully behind that the sensation, and then the pleasure.
Yeah.
And what about her partner? Like, is there, what do you advise women to communicate with a partner? So if a woman's working with you, I know you work a lot
Yeah.
with clients one on one, and
Yeah.
how do you have her communicate? Because I know for men, they often feel well, there's layers, right? They can feel upset that she's not feeling anything. Sometimes they take it personally, like I'm not good enough lover, or it's like how do men handle this? Because it's a sensitive topic, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, men are expected to know everything, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's just like subconscious pressure that makes it for a lot of men quite hard to acknowledge, wow, I'm lost here. I don't know how to help her with that, even though I wish I could make her feel all these amazing things she desires to feel. And it's really hard to be kind of helpless, especially, right? You love this person, and yeah, it's really can be really frustrating for men, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that my partner really wanted to help me. And it took some time for me, though, to be able to share this because there's often a lot of shame attached to this
Mm-hmm.
topic. And that is just a part of the trauma response, right? Like when we had a traumatic experience, it always comes with shame, even if
Mm-hmm.
there was nothing we could have done to prevent or could have done different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just didn't know better, but still there's shame.
Yeah.
And so that is something that we can't override because in an ideal scenario, your man would just give you yoni massages once a week. I've recently got there with my partner. It's fantastic. But it was a long way to get there as a couple because in
Yeah.
the beginning he was super insecure in like what to do because it's already so sensitive and she already broke herself once with that crazy wand and like what do I don't want to do anything wrong. And
Mm.
then it can be also the man, like thank you, man. You have to hold a lot of space for these emotions that are with these stories, and it's probably from lovers that are been 10 years ago, and it has
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with you, but you were there to facilitate that healing in that moment. So you are there when she's maybe really frustrated. My first yoni massages were just like done with it, and it was like, oh, that was painful, thanks, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah. So if a man, like, if he's inside massaging and then he touches pain, what do you advise? That he like pulls away, or how can, because that's a very fragile moment, right?
uh-huh, uh-huh. So yeah, this is the real beauty of doing this with your partner because there is so much communication needed to do this successfully, right? So it's a constant checking in. My partner really changed how much he's checking in with me during lovemaking from the yoni massages because he noticed that from one second to the other, it can change. It was
Yeah.
pleasure, now there's pain. There's pain, now there's pleasure. There
Yeah.
she doesn't feel anything, even though yesterday that was great. It's
Yeah.
like, so he really learned to ask me more. And I think it's really sexy because sometimes it's like, oh, do you like this, And sometimes it's like just plain up, is this okay?
Mhm.
And when we're doing the yoni massage, it's like you go quite strategically in all the different places. Like imagine it's a clock and you just see what is there. So every
Mhm.
time you go to a new place, you ask as a partner, right? As a man, you're like, oh, what is here? And for me, because my voice, I said my boundaries, it's always been a big journey to be able
Mm.
to speak up and not to freeze.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I would really practice, every 20 seconds to give an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
That's
like,
part of the healing, right? To be able to
that
speak
is the
up and
amazing piece about this.
break the freeze and break the silence and
Yeah,
find a voice. Let our yoni have a
yeah.
voice again, because so many women are
Hmm.
silenced. So many
Yes.
women are silenced around speaking up. And we're all taught, like you say, about this kind of porn and media where the women are apparently having pleasure from things that we see, and we're
Hmm.
like, that is not pleasurable. We know, our
Hmm.
body knows, our body's watching going, that's not
Yeah.
pleasurable because it's all faked.
Hmm.
It's just an entertainment industry.
Yeah.
But that's what we're all learning from.
Yeah.
And so, it's then very hard
Yeah.
for us to speak up and say that actually doesn't work for me, or I'm not enjoying this. And,
Yes.
I think it's really, and also you mentioned how men are just expected to know everything, and they just want to like come
Mhm.
in and be able to press all the right buttons and give you multiple
Mhm.
orgasms. And none of that serves us, that actually it's better to break the silence for both of us, for both
Yeah.
partners, to be able
Yeah.
to speak through the experience and
Mm.
get more into the body and not try to make a Hollywood movie out of it.
And there are so many amazing practices, right? To do more of this communication.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can really recommend checking out Betty Martin, The Wheel of Consent, the 3 minute game. That's a really great practice for couples to practice speaking up.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, because I would feel really wrong and broken about the fact that I wouldn't tell my partner, right? We're together for almost 8 years, and it happens to me still sometimes that I don't want to disappoint him. And I'm
Hmm.
like, now I'm catching myself so much quicker, right? It's not like
Yeah.
a minute in that I'm like, actually, this is not that nice. Now it's like a few seconds, but I'm still sometimes having the same pattern coming up of like, ah, it's fine. And then I'm, no, actually, it's not fine. And it
Yeah.
took a long time.
I think it's so important that you're highlighting this because also having worked with women for decades, I notice again and again we're trained to be pleasers, and like culturally, women are kind of trained to be submissive and be pleasing and go yes, 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 I'm really loving it, and our body's going nah, I'm not ready. And
Yeah.
this doesn't serve anyone because
Mhm.
like actually men much more enjoy it when we're genuinely enjoying it. So we think we're
Yeah.
pleasing them by pretending we're enjoying it, but they can feel the difference
Yeah.
once they feel our body really enjoying it and surrendering and receiving. Once a
Yeah.
man has tasted that authentic pleasure in a woman's body, then he doesn't want to go
Mhm.
back to women faking it. So it doesn't please anyone, but it's such
Yeah.
a deeply ingrained, I mean, it's a trauma response, as you say, right? Fawning, pleasing, but it's also a cultural conditioning that we all
Yeah.
have that really doesn't serve anyone. We call it the pleaser, but it
Yeah.
doesn't please anyone.
And for me, it's an added dimension of insecurity in the bedroom that I had to face
Hmm.
because it was like if I would have said the tiniest thing of I don't like this, all my partners in the past would have stopped immediately and said, okay, like let's do something else then, right? So like
Yeah.
every man I've ever been with was super willing to, they don't want me to have pain. That's not
Hmm.
fun for them. And then to find out later, even, it's really painful. For my partner, sometimes he would be really sad and be like, wow, and it instills insecurity in him too.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but my insecurity was that I didn't know what I like because there was so little pleasure for me that I couldn't
Hmm.
redirect. I couldn't say, oh, that wasn't nice, but please, can you do this?
Hmm.
And that made me also really scared of speaking up because then what?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, but what would you like? And I'm like, oh shit, I should know this, right?
Yeah.
Awkward.
Yeah.
And that awkwardness was like so scary for me. I didn't want it to go there because it's so uncomfortable to
Yeah, right. You'd
be
rather just
one
put up
hot
with something you're not
woman.
enjoying because you don't know what else to ask for.
Yes,
How did you get
yes.
around from that? That's a really, I'm sure many people are resonating with that. Many women are like, uh-huh, yeah, and better keep quiet because I don't really know
Mm,
what I want to hear.
yeah,
Let's just
I'm
put up with
like,
this.
yeah, it's really sad.
How
Yeah,
did you navigate that one?
self-pleasure. So, and pleasure meditation and tantric and Taoist practices.
Right. So
So,
you just took yourself on a journey. Yeah, there's people saying that they're
mhm.
resonating with that. And
Oh,
resonating with the
thank
fact,
you,
yeah, we're so
sister.
conditioned to put men's pleasure in their sexuality. This comment, actually, we're so conditioned to put men's pleasure and their sexuality above our own pleasure and boundaries. It's true. And one thing I notice in Tantra is that men also have more pleasure when we're in our true pleasure. Like
Yeah,
like everybody thinks, men think I want what I see in porn, and women think
Mhm.
they want what they see in porn, and we're all doing what we think that should be done there. But actually, when we break out of that conditioning and start exploring these Tao and tantric practices
Mhm.
and going deeper, and we discover first and foremost, like, oh wow, now I enjoy my body. But men also go, my God, this is so much better. I feel your yoni, I
Mhm.
feel your vagina, like massaging my lingam. I feel, men feel the orgasm coming out of the woman's body into their body. Like men way more enjoy a woman in her pleasure than a woman faking it. So it's just not
Yeah.
serving anyone. I just like, it's just
Yeah.
such a tragedy for everybody.
And also this indescribable feeling of being surrendered, like it's like you almost hard to put in words, but there is this state where it's just like the body is so open and I'm always like falling backwards into nothing. And it's like pure giving up all control and it's like really, and my partner is just guiding it and he knows like in this moment just like he fully has everything in front of his hands, right in front of his eyes. It's like just open, and it's so beautiful and it is so different from
You can't fake that, right? You
it
can't fake it.
is beyond. Yeah. Yeah. So
So it's
I'm
worth
sorry,
it
I
for
would
everyone.
love to explain better.
Because sometimes I think people are like, oh, it's all for women and I have to slow down
Yeah.
and do this stuff all for women. And I always want to say to the men out there, like, no, this is for you too, believe it or not. Like, you might have to go
Mhm.
through a little phase that's focused more on healing and slowing down and listening. But what's on the other side of that healing journey is a win-win. It's really better for everyone. It's worth
Yeah.
taking that
Yeah.
journey. And you need to know, okay, there can be a journey,
Yeah.
and it can be a difficult journey, right?
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about, like, the you mentioned, like, the pain that's in there and the unconscious sort of knowing that the pain is in there, because I think this is also something that of course you never
Yeah.
see in
This
media.
actually ties, yeah, this actually ties into what I also wanted to mention about self-pleasure, because you said, oh, how did you get from I don't know what I want to what I want? It's like usually with the women who come to me, when they have a lot of pain and numbness, I recommend taking a break from penetration for a couple of weeks, ideally a couple really months. But that's always sounds really scary. So I'm starting slow. They usually want to extend because they're like, oh, this is actually wow, there's so much pressure's falling off me. And yeah, so in the self-pleasure exploration, there's beautiful practices like starting from the outside in. We don't want our lover to straight start our like touch our vulva. So often in self-pleasure, we copy what we've already our pattern that we have in sexuality with a partner. So if that's really quick and just goal orientated, I would touch myself the exact same way that I don't enjoy being touched because I don't know
Mm-hmm.
anything better, right? That was
Mm-hmm.
me in the past. So
Right.
then when I start exploring, it's very important to like open the breast because it's connected to our heart and our nipples can bring so much arousal and in our yonis because they're connected to our clitoris and so much beauty there already. And we don't even have to touch the yoni yet. The
And
yoni
just,
doesn't
I know
like
you have so
to
much
be.
share, but just pausing here
Yeah.
for a minute. Breasts, like, for me, when I my breasts were first touched sexually, I was like 14 or 15, so it was like a 14-year-old boy who was like grabbing, because he had been taught, like, you just have to get under the clothes and grab the breast. And so like, my first breast sexual touch was like this grabbing and grasping, and and I'm like, I got no pleasure from it, but it was what was
Mm.
done. So like you,
Mm.
then I'm like, okay, this is how you meant to touch breasts.
Yes.
And it took
It's
me until
bizarre, huh?
doing self massage and soft music that I was like, oh my God, this soft, sensitive touch is like taking me into a breast orgasm, like I had no idea that that was possible because no one ever touched it like that. And I, like you, I
Yeah.
would mirror what was being done to me in self pleasure, which was all
Yeah.
very fast and hard. And I also want to just say, fast and hard can be amazing, but only at the
Yes.
right time, right? It's like,
Exactly. Even porn sex. I even say that to the men who work with me. Like even the sex and porn, you can have that sex. But for me personally, I need like 2 hours of
you need,
amazing
exactly.
pleasure with
Yeah.
no penetration and just wow. I'm like high peak arousal. And then I'm like, oh my God, now take me like in
Now
the
I
porn,
want it
Like
hard. Exactly.
now.
Yeah, exactly. It's worth explaining that too. Like, there is a point
Exactly.
that, like, all of that hard,
Exactly.
fast stuff is just absolutely amazing, but it's got to
Yes.
come at the right time.
Exactly. There's a time for it. And then it's Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you asked about the pain and the numbness and the resistance. So for example, the breast massage, right? We're
Mhm,
starting with that a lot of times. And I have clients, they just don't do it. And
mhm.
I love my clients and I am there to support them. So I don't tell them off. I dig deeper. I'm like, so why don't you do it, right? And it's like, well, when I start, I feel really tired and I don't, and I was busy that day, and all the excuses. And
Mhm,
what I discovered is the reason why women are not taking time for their own pleasure and doing the practices that we know would help us is because there's a subconscious part of us that knows exactly that there is a lot of emotions that could potentially come up.
mhm,
It's like opening a box and you have no idea what's in there just now.
mhm.
And you're like, ooh,
Easier to
better
just
not
be
open a
busy.
box.
Yeah.
Exactly. I might rather clean my kitchen and open a box. So that's why there's often a lot of resistance. So that's when I start working with them one on one because I'm like, okay, I'm doing it with you.
Mm,
Even on Zoom, that's perfectly fine for this, holding space for what comes up. And then there's often tears when they then do start that. And I know from my own journey, it's like the moment I would connect from being so disconnected from my body has a lot to release. It's the opportunity. Finally,
yeah.
finally, someone listens. And I have all this stuff buried that I don't want to hold on to. Like, let's put that up on the surface so it can go. And so there's often resistance for doing our own healing because there is a big fear that it might be too overwhelming.
Mhm,
Like when I did my practice with the pleasure wand and I would re-traumatize myself. Like I didn't, it took me a long time to actually do it. And there was a subconscious part scared of what's going to come. And I was not prepared at that moment, right? So if we start with something that's so much more gentle, like working in the heart and working with the breast instead of getting the crowbar out, right? Then we have the opportunity to release emotions in a less charged way
mhm,
with just gentler.
mhm,
And it's a great practice to allow tears to come, to allow anger to come. And if a woman or anyone never had any experience in how to move emotional energy, we mentioned breath, sound, and movement. And that is also like really going into the animal self, for example, of just really like being really wild and like your face goes crazy and you're not civilized anymore. You're just like swearing like crazy. If that's a possible outlet for you, you can slowly create more and more safety that something big comes up. You have a tool that worked for you. Your body has learned that when something really frustrating or sad or angry, surfaces, that there is a way to move this. It doesn't mean because I'm sad in my breast massage, I'll be crying the whole day.
mhm.
Even though that has happened in the past, maybe to me, that when I allow the crying, it would never stop. And I
Yeah.
would like curl up in a little ball and hide.
Mhm,
And so my clients really, the biggest lesson there is to grow the capacity to let emotions arise and know
mhm,
how to move them. So we
mhm.
don't have to be scared of touching our sensitive parts.
And getting stuck, like I love all this clarity you have, that actually we do have a lot of people have fear of feeling emotion because there's this feeling of if I start, it's never going to stop. That's a
Yeah,
big fear. And yet actually that's emotional release. So it's actually going to come out and be gone. It's when we kind of try and keep ourselves from feeling it that it stays
yeah,
there the whole time, and
yeah,
we end up just depressed or kind of even numb to life or
yeah,
dull, or that it actually gets stuck there. So what you're talking
yeah,
about is not feeling the emotion the first time but releasing it.
yeah,
And that's also important for the men. Thank you guys who are listening. For men to understand that if you're making love or touching a woman and she starts feeling emotion, that you don't need to take it personally, but hold space and support her
hmm
and say, like, yes, go for it, let it out, like help her to feel to not feel shame and to feel safe
yeah.
to let emotions through.
It's almost like you're welcoming them. like a good friend. It's like
Yeah.
when my clients start crying in the first session, it's often like, oh my God, I mean, I feel it completely. It's like a bit embarrassing. It's like, wow, am I too much? All these things. Am I supposed to cry? She's just touching my feet. What's going on? And
Mhm.
yeah, and I'm just really like, that's beautiful, beautiful. And it's
Yeah.
just you feel the body being like, oh, okay. And yeah, that's just one little story I would like to add here with this idea that we want to put, like, don't want to feel it and kind of want to put it back in the box. And this resistance, we all have it, and it takes up so much energy. And I
Mm.
had a really like one epiphany with that actually, because I had a phase where I was so jealous of my partner's ex-girlfriend, and we would be at the same party, and every time, I don't know, I would see her in a certain way, I would feel it's like stab. It's just like this contraction of like, oh God, she's so great, and I just feel really horrible right now.
Oh,
And I had a moment where I was so tired of it. I was like, of feeling like this, right?
yeah.
That I reached my hands up to the universe and I was like, okay, like give it all at once because I'm tired of this, right? Like give me all of it. Like really, I wanted it. I'm like, how bad can I feel? Like how jealous can one be? And I give it to me.
That's brilliant. I love it.
And it was
What
gone.
happened?
It never came. It
It
never
never
came.
came.
Nothing. It was like gone
Yeah, oh, but that's
because I
brilliant. Because you
finally
stopped
stopped
resisting it. Yeah.
resisting it. I was inviting it into my body. And I use that a lot as kind of reverse psychologying myself and my clients of like, they tell me, wow, I feel this big break in my throat and I feel like I'm about to vomit. And, describing how their body
Mm,
feels when they're really sad and angry. I'm
mhm.
like, oh, okay, let's welcome this big break, like let's smile to it.
Yeah.
What is it doing there? Maybe make some more space for the break, actually. Like, let's breathe in here. And you're inviting that break to really, take up space. And this really helps to get rid of the brick. But
Mm,
it's like one of these life conundrums, right? Like to
yes.
have the best orgasm, stop wanting orgasms. So it's like if you want to get rid of the horrible feelings, invite them in.
Absolutely. Resistance is such a big part of it all, huh? And
Yeah.
we end up fighting
Mm-hmm.
everything and it becomes so much
Mm-hmm.
work. And to just, yeah, to say yes to it all. I mean, as I'm listening to your story, I'm thinking about how a very early discourse I heard by Osho years ago, like 2001, I think it was, in the ashram. I remember him talking about tantra, and he said tantra is saying yes to life, and it was all about saying yes to life. And I remember going out of that discourse and like thinking again and again about like how much I was resisting things, resisting emotions, resisting feeling things, resisting pain, resisting, and what an effort it is. Like you said, it's exhausting. It's really exhausting, and it's I love your technique of like bring it on, like that's it. I'd rather just bring it on than fight it, every day, day in, day out.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell my clients all the time, you are in this moment strong enough to feel this. Like, just you're
Mm,
strong enough right now to feel the full, discomfort
that's
of,
great.
yeah, being so contracted. And I know it sucks. I know how horrible it feels, but you can do it. You can feel it.
Yes.
I'm here with you, you know.
Oh, I love that. Oh, there's a comment here. What a beautiful conversation. Just hearing this out loud in a conversation brings so much safety around intimate pleasure.
Mm,
Yeah, it's so neat. We so need to be real, right? We've had so
yeah.
much fake pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
fake sex, fake bodies, fake, it's all
Mm-hmm.
the media has just given us so much fakeness. And, wouldn't it be
Yeah.
great to have movies where the couple are making love and then the woman has pain and then the man holds space and then she emotes and beats a pillow and then they laugh and then they make love and like some real stuff. The
Yeah.
kind of movies that we need to have.
Yeah. Totally.
They give us
Yeah.
permission to be real and to be ourselves and to go on
Mm,
this journey
yeah,
that's not just so straightforward for everyone. There's so much, not
yeah.
only our own personal trauma but ancestral trauma, and we know more and more now from science, right, that like maybe your great great grandmother experienced abuse or rape, and that that
Mm,
that that trauma, if it wasn't healed generations ago, is called generational trauma, and it shows up in our bodies So
Yeah.
we may not always have a reason or a story or an understanding of the emotions and the
Yeah.
feelings, but we
Yeah.
need to let them through anyway. And I think
Yeah.
that's an important part of it,
Yeah.
right?
So many women with pain and numbness, they're like, but I haven't been raped. It's like,
Mm,
yeah, that's really great. Like, I'm really happy. And at the same time, there is so much more to trauma in the body than just these really catastrophic, really horrific events.
mhm,
And even an accumulation of small things, when there is a buildup of resistance, it can get so much worse. It's like the longer I
mm,
spend resisting a certain emotion, the deeper I bury it into my subconscious. And it's like this big
mhm,
monster that gets created of like, I've not been angry about this in such a long time. If I
yeah.
allow this anger, I might turn into full on crazy women. Like, whoa, it's like with the never ending cry. It's like, am I just going to become batshit crazy and like completely lose it?
Mhm,
And that is a really deep fear in most of us.
mm,
And it's quite often unconscious as well. There's just the
mhm, mhm.
resistance. And
And
then
this,
we
I
can
think,
beat
is a
ourselves up about being resistant.
place where we can talk about like professional work, like you're doing,
Mhm.
that sometimes it can be overwhelming for a partner, or even
Yes.
overwhelming just on your own. And
Yeah.
I loved how you mentioned earlier, I'm here with you to feel it with you. You can do this, and
Yeah.
I'm here too. And I think,
Yeah.
that's really, about the work that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Is offering to be there with someone,
Yeah.
to literally hold space and to say, I'm not afraid of
Mhm.
your anger. I know you're a bit afraid of your anger. Let's start to let it
Mm.
out, or your
Yeah.
tears, or whatever it is. Let's start to do this together, right?
Yeah. And I'd love to add about this holding space, because I know in the Tantra community we say this a lot. Holding space for me in this moment means that my nervous system is really calm and regulated, whereas yours is not, because you're allowing this deep grief or deep anger to move through. So
Hmm.
there's an anchor point for you of a reference of how crazy this actually is right now, because my body and my face, my voice is sending you the information. Everything's okay. You're safe.
Hmm. Hmm.
And another thing that a space holder does is to bring you back to consciousness. And in that sense, I mean by that the awareness of your physical body, your
Yeah.
energetic body, because what happens, what keeps us going into the 2 hour cry or the not very helpful rage period where we do things that we wish we didn't do, is that our mind kicks in and our mind wants to explain what's going on because it's so confusing to experience intense energy of rage or, grief. So our mind kicks in and starts explaining what's going on. It's like, of
Yeah.
course you're angry. This is really horrible. How could ever anyone? Or like the saddest one of frustration is, yeah, of course you're crying. You really fucked this up. Like, well, you're really broken. I don't think this is ever going to get better. And look at you right
Mm,
now.
mm,
So our mind can really perpetuate what the emotion has brought up. And that is not very helpful when
no.
we want to move energy because we create a loop. And what
Yeah.
we want to do is create a flow, right? We
Yeah.
want the energy to come up and move, and maybe it gets amplified, and we're like, oh, this is too much. But then it also goes down again because it's flowing and we're
Hmm.
not pinning it down and doing a hamster wheel around it.
Yeah.
And so when I'm holding space, I also just guide you back into the body because that's actually your safest place to be.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it hasn't been safe in the past. So when we had trauma, right? So that's why we left the body.
Hmm.
However, we're coming home in this process of healing and we are realizing that this body is the safest place and it's always been the best place to be. And that is also part of the space holding.
Hmm. So we have so many women here in our audience that live tantra, asking about this topic and looking for more support,
Mm.
and men wanting to know how to help their partners. So you have offered to step in as a coach for Live Tantra, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to be doing group coaching for 4 weeks which I'm super
Yes.
excited about starting on Wednesday. Would you like
Yay.
to talk a little bit about that journey for those who are
Yes.
interested?
So basically, from the last years of working with one-on-one clients, I created a flow of exercises and things to address in order to move from pain and numbness to pleasure.
Mhm.
And we start really gently because of what we've discussed in this talk today about emotions are part of the healing journey. We cannot work with sexual energy and trauma and sexuality in general if we're not including emotions, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So so that will be part of the coaching. And we're starting gently. So we start from the outside in. The first tantric practice that really turns it around for women who want more pleasure is to bring mindfulness to it, right?
Mm,
Like we can enjoy our lives so much more when we're mindful. And of course, we enjoy sex so much more when we're mindful with it. And the good news about this is that we're literally meditating on pleasure. And if you are signed up for group coaching and you're already invested and you're motivated because of that, then the chances that you come along with me and make it a habit are very high. So I will give you support in that through video practices that you can just press play. For some people, that's the easiest way, and give you tips on like how to integrate it into your daily life, and you will start to change your body chemistry even. I love this piece.
mm.
So what Tantra does is to move away from dopamine hits. You know, dopamine is that hormone that makes you really happy and excited when you get like a notification from Instagram and you're like, ah, amazing. Um, and actually, when we have clitoral orgasms that are very fast, that's also the satisfaction of like, or if we have a one night stand and it's like this real excitement that we don't have with our long term partner a lot of times. That's dopamine in the body, and we love it because it's so, feels amazing. However, we're on the path of love. So if we have oxytocin in our body, we feel really content and loving and
Mhm,
fulfilled. And these practices that bring mindfulness and like gentle touch, especially breast massage, floods your body with oxytocin and makes you feel safe and fulfilled
mhm,
in your sexuality.
mm,
And that's the journey we're on through this week is emotional release and opening your body to through safety, right? That's the first pillar.
mhm,
Talk
mhm,
addressing resistance and then moving into making feeling good in your skin a habit.
mhm.
Mm.
Which is what we want. So you're going to be offering, there's going to be live classes where you're guiding people through and then also coaching women individually,
Yes.
which I know is one of your expertise. Like one of the things you're really great
Mm-hmm.
at is when someone actually starts feeling a trauma response and you can guide
Mm.
her through it. So on a group coaching,
Yeah.
you get to witness how somebody else does that, or it might be you going through it, but that's super helpful hands-on information because anywhere
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of look up the techniques, but actually the thing we really need
Mm-hmm.
is to know how to navigate the emotional release and the trauma, like you're saying, that's
Yes.
coming up. Like techniques you can
Yeah.
get anywhere, but it's actually how to hold
Yeah.
space in ourselves for those
Yeah.
techniques and get it from a loop to a flow. I love that
Yeah.
description. So that's something that you're
Exactly.
doing on the online and the live classes,
Yeah.
right?
There's a reason you haven't signed up for something like this or you haven't done your homework of like what you read in a book. It's not that you're lazy. It's because there's a subconscious part in you that's really scared to do
Mm,
this work. And
mm,
we need to really hold that really dear, right? And be like,
mhm.
hey, come along. It's going to be gentle and maybe it's
Yeah.
going to be intense, but, we make it safe.
We go at your pace, and
Yeah.
I love what you're describing about the gentleness. It's in trauma healing, as you know, is called titration, like just dropping a little bit at a time, going at your own pace, making it safe for
Yeah.
the body again, and letting the body know we're not going to keep forcing you into things. This time it's for you. This time we're showing up. We're
Yes.
going to slow down and find your level and go with you, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so important to hear that, because I think we have been bombarded with like sex toys and sexual techniques and porn moves and all
Hmm.
these things that we've subjected our bodies to in the name of pleasure, and just become more
Mm.
and more numb or
Yeah,
dissociated, or far
yeah,
away from our pleasure rather than close to it.
yeah.
So it's quite a journey.
Yeah, one of my clients, she has like 5 books on her nightstand about like how to have better sex and how to heal this or how to heal that. And when we started coaching, right, it even took a moment until she was ready to touch her breast because there was so much coming up for her.
Mm,
And all that resistance, right? It's fully understandable that she did not go on a self-healing journey with all her books on the nightstand. They would
mm,
just remind her every day that she should be doing this.
mm.
And I
Then you
think
feel
it's really
worse.
it's kind of like almost a little punishment of like, oh, I should be healing this thing. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and you can have support as well,
I
just
had the same.
letting you know.
I had a boyfriend who gave me Mantak Chia's first book, and I remember reading it and feeling like, oh my God, I'll never be tantric. I don't know anything. I don't know even know where my perineum is. How can I do this?
Yeah.
And I had to go on a live training, and then I was like, oh, phew, I can do this. So
Yes.
yeah, I think it's
Yes.
important to be guided. And then, as well as live classes, you've also put together some material that you think is very helpful. You want to just tell us that? And
Yes.
I know we're a bit over time, but just tell us that little piece.
I filmed a beautiful course with practices and talks. So I had a lot of clients basically on all my experience with my personal clients that people, you said this thing about emotional energy and release and resistance and tantra and sex. And so I recorded some of the main things as talks, but also practices like pleasure meditation, the breast massage, just for you to have as a course.
Mm.
Because I know we want to make it as easy as possible to succeed because we've shamed ourselves enough this lifetime.
Yeah.
So let's try and give ourselves all the bonuses and all the tools to succeed on this journey to pleasure.
Hmm. Aw,
Mm,
I love your attitude. It's so beautiful. So I put a
mm,
little link here. Um, there's a question. I have to work at 11 EST on a Wednesday. Can I still join? And yes, you can. You can watch
yes,
replays. If
yes,
you have to work, then yeah, there will be replays. Of course, it's really valuable if you can join things live.
yeah.
But of course, if you're working, you're working. Um,
Hmm.
there will also be, so if you haven't joined a Live Tantra group like this before, like the one Laura's about to hold, it's a fully confidential space, including names of people who are there. We ask everyone to hold it confidential, not to share other people's things. So we really hold it so you feel safe in that level going there. If you join live, you get a chance to ask questions. There'll be breakout rooms, opportunities to share with other participants. So there's that, but there will also be recordings of all that Laura's teaching so that you can do it in your own time. And then, as well as that, there is a membership group on the Live Tantra community that is secret. No one else can see it's there. Only the women who join the training are in there. And there you can ask questions and chat and share experiences all week long. And Laura will be in
Hmm.
there answering questions. So even if you
Yes.
cannot make the actual live class, you can still go in there and talk with Laura and reach out and add in your questions and get support. And you have access to that for forever. It's lifetime access to those classes once you've joined. Yeah.
Mm.
Good. I would love to hear your take on goal orientation. But we're up to time. I would like to hear this too. I'm going to read the question out, but we'll have to do it in another talk. I would love to hear your take on goal orientation, how to change the pattern, especially for men. I feel this is so deeply imprinted and part of conditioning and male energy, especially if one never came into touch with conscious self exploration. That's a very big
Mm.
topic, and we could maybe do another talk on it. I can share one very quick thing on that me and my partner came up with in couples retreats, and through playing the 3-minute game, like Laura's sharing, we noticed that when men say to their partners, "Shall we have sex tonight?" Women's bodies often like brace, like okay, and then they feel this pressure, and it's very hard for them to open. But we notice when we invite the men to invite their women to a pleasure session, without that goal of penetration in there. Would you
Yeah.
like to share some pleasure? Should we explore some pleasure together?
Mm.
Women could really go, ah, pleasure. Yeah, that sounds nice. And then maybe that pleasure leads into intercourse. Maybe that pleasure leads to sleep. Maybe that pleasure leads to some bizarre toe orgasm experience you never knew was possible. But that, that, that really helps because men do like to say, hey, let's do this thing. So we
Mhm.
invite men to turn the word into, and not only the word but the concept into pleasure, like let's have a
Yeah.
pleasure session. So that's a small nugget, but I know that Laura
Mhm.
can teach more on that, but it will
I
have
have
to be
one
fun.
sentence.
Okay.
Relaxing massages beforehand. Just make sure you really relax them. And if you see them tensing their butts and thighs, it's just like, like that relaxation can really bring them into the presence of the pleasure in the moment and not the goal.
The men.
Yeah, and the women,
Yeah. And the
everyone.
women.
Yeah,
Everyone needs more buttock massage. I
exactly.
wholeheartedly agree.
And if you're yeah, like with any bracing, like if you can relax and open, then you're more in the moment.
Yeah. Great. Okay, that's our last little nuggets because we've gone way over. But it's been such a great conversation. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
Laura. And
Shashi.
thank you to everyone who's tuned in here today as well. Thank you for joining in the
Mm,
conversation and being part of this movement to bring more consciousness to our intimacy, to our love, to our relating, and to our spiritual experience in these human bodies. So
mm.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
if you want more information about Laura's course, you can always message hello@livetantra.com. That's our lovely
Mhm.
Catherine. She'll be there answering questions. You can jump on the community. You can go to Live Tantra Academy. And I hope to see you all again soon.